Hi, kids. Can anybody out there tell me what time it is? Yeah, it's story time. You knew that. I knew that. Well, welcome back to episode 6 of our story, Wonder. Now, if you've reached episode 6 and you haven't seen episode 5, be sure to go back and check that one out. Don't want you to miss any episodes. I don't want you to get confused about the story. And I hope those of you that are following along that it's clear and that you're able to keep up. Okay, let me know if there's anything unclear. Now, in our last episode, wow, that was quite a roller coaster ride of emotion that Augie went through. Let me just review how that ended. You may recall that Augie and Summer were having lunch, and they always sit together at the lunch table that they call the summer table. Remember, because they discovered that they had something in common, her name being Summer and his name being August, so they call it summer names. They invited anybody with summer names could sit at this table, and we'll call it the summer table. But yet, all of the other kids they invited apparently never took them up on the offer, so it was always just the two of them. So they always had lunch together. And while they were having lunch, Summer mentioned to Augie that they were allowed to wear their Halloween costumes to school on Halloween Day. Augie was really excited about that because he was going to come as one of his favorite Star Wars characters or something. So anyway, that morning when he was getting dressed, he was running late. All kind of things were going wrong. For example, the costume he wanted to wear has all kind of buckles and belts that was taking a long time to put on. His dad had to get to work in a hurry. He was going to be late for a meeting, and he had to be able to drop the kids off to school and everything. And then at the same time, Via, his older sister, was having some kind of a crying fit going on, so things were just going wrong. So his dad kept hurrying, Augie, I gotta go. So Augie decided he didn't have time to put on the costume that he wanted, so he put on a different costume, the one that he wore the previous year before he had gone to this school. And it was this ghost costume, just a long black gown or something with a ghost mask, a bloody ghost mask on it. So he put that one on instead, and he went to school. And as he was at school and he had the mask on, nobody knew who he was. Other kids had their costumes on. He's walking down the hallway, and for the first time, he said, he was able to hold his head up and look around and see other kids because they didn't know who he was. In fact, there was another kid who had the very same costume he had on coming down the hall the other way, and when they saw each other, the other kid high-fived him. Something like that has never happened to him. And he said to himself, if that kid had known who was behind this mask, do you think he would have given me a high five? Probably not. But Augie was just enjoying being able to hide his face behind this mask. And as he walked into his homeroom, there were other kids in there in their masks. And of course, one of them was in the Darth Sidious costume. And we know who that kid was. Well, Augie walked in, and he's in this ghost costume that nobody knew who he was because they were sitting there waiting, the Darth Sidious character and a couple of mummies, waiting for a Star Wars character that they thought was Augie to come in. But they didn't know Augie was already in the room. And Augie sat down in a chair near where they was and listened to them talk. And as he listened, he found out that Darth Sidious, who we knew was Julius, was talking to this other character, which was one of the mummies. And this other character was saying very terrible things about Augie, about how bad he looked, and about if he looked as bad as Augie, he might even kill himself. And Augie realized that this other character was Jack. Yeah, Jack. The person he thought was his friend was talking about him behind his back. Augie was heartbroken. I mean, he was crushed. He ran out of that room. Of course, nobody knew he was even in there in the first place. He went to I think the second floor bathrooms and sat in there and just cried his heart out in one of the stalls. He just cried and cried until he got a stomachache. He went down to the nurse's office. She called his mom. She took him home. He decided he never wanted to go back to that school again. Think about that. Think about what he went through, this extreme high of happiness to this extreme low. Jeez. And also think about the fact that as we read this story, we're reading this story through Augie's perspective. Now, what is perspective? Perspective is point of view, as though we're seeing it through Augie's eyes. Now, imagine as we're reading this story and Augie's talking about these people and what they say to him and what they do to him and what they feel about him. Imagine that you're inside of Augie and you're looking outside of Augie's eyes. In other words, imagine you are Augie and you are hearing this and you are seeing this and you are feeling this. Then that's Augie's perspective. We are going to now look at this story through a different perspective. We're going to now see it through Via's perspective. Remember Via? Via is Augie's older sister. She's in high school. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about Via. She's very protective of Augie. She loves Augie very much. If anybody says anything bad about Augie, she'll just jump on him right away. But also, Via has been different lately. She seems very depressed. She seems to cry a lot. Anyway, let's get into the story from Via's perspective. August is the sun. Me and Mom and Dad are planets orbiting the sun. The rest of our family and friends are asteroids and comets floating around the planets orbiting the sun. The only celestial body that doesn't orbit the sun is Daisy the dog, and that's only because to her little doggy eyes, August's face doesn't look any different from any other human face. To Daisy, all our faces look alike, as flat and pale as the moon. I'm used to the way this universe works. I've never minded it because it's all I've ever known. I've always understood that August is special and has special needs. If I was playing too loudly and he was trying to take a nap, I knew I would have to play something else because he needed to rest after some procedure or other, and that had left him weak and in pain. If I wanted Mom and Dad to watch me play soccer, I knew 9 out of 10 times they'd miss it because they were busy shuttling August to speech therapy or physical therapy or some new specialist or a surgery. Mom and Dad would always say I was the most understanding little girl in the world. I don't know about that. Just that I understood that there was no point in complaining. I've seen August after his surgeries, his little face bandaged up and swollen, his tiny body full of IVs and tubes to keep him alive. After you've seen someone else going through that, it feels kind of crazy to complain over not getting a toy that you asked for or your mom missing a school play. I knew this even when I was 6 years old. No one had to tell me. I just knew it. So I've gotten used to not complaining, and I've gotten used to not bothering mom and dad with little stuff. I've gotten used to figuring things out on my own. How to put my toys together, how to organize my life so I don't miss my friends' birthday parties, how to stay on top of schoolwork so I never fall behind in class. I've never asked for help with my schoolwork, never needed reminding to finish a project or study for a test. If I was having trouble with a subject in school, I'd go home and study it until I figured it out on my own. I taught myself how to convert fractions into decimal points by going online. I've done every school project pretty much myself. When mom or dad asked me how things were going in school, I'd always say good, even when it hadn't always been good. My worst day, worst fall, worst headache, worst bruise, worst cramp, worst mean thing anyone could say has always been nothing compared to what August has gone through. This isn't me being noble, by the way. It's just the way I know it is. And this is the way it's always been for me, for the little universe of us. But this year there seems to be a shift in the cosmos. The galaxy is changing. The planets are falling out of alignment. I honestly don't remember my life before August came into it. I look at pictures of me as a baby and I see mom and dad smiling so happily holding me. I can't believe how much younger they look back then. Dad was this hipster dude and mom was this Brazilian fashionista. There's one shot of me at my 3rd birthday. Dad's right behind me, while mom's holding the cake with 3 candles lit. And in back of us are Tata and Papa, Grands, Uncle Ben, Aunt Kate, Uncle Poe. Everyone's looking at me and I'm looking at the cake. You can see in the picture how I really was the first child, the first grandchild, the first niece. I don't remember what I felt like, of course, but I can see it. I can see it plain as can be in the picture. I don't remember the day they brought August home from the hospital. I don't remember what I said or did or felt when I saw him for the first time. Though everyone has a story about it. Apparently, I just looked at him for a long time without saying anything at all. And then finally I said, "It doesn't look like Lily." That was the name of a doll Grands gave me when Mom was pregnant so that I could practice being a big sister. It was one of those dolls that are incredibly lifelike, and I had carried it everywhere for months, changing its diapers, feeding it. I'm told I even made a baby sling for it. The story goes that after my initial reaction to August, it only took a few minutes, according to Gran, or a few days, according to Mom, before I was all over him, kissing him, cuddling him, baby talking to him. After that, I never so much as touched or mentioned Lily again. I never used to see August the way other people saw him. I knew he didn't look exactly normal. But I really didn't understand why strangers seemed so shocked when they saw him, horrified, sickened, scared. There are so many words that I could use to describe the look on people's faces, and for a long time I didn't get it. I just get mad. Mad when they'd stare, mad when they'd look away. "What the heck are you looking at?" I'd say to people, even to grown-ups. Then, when I was about 11, I went to stay with Grands in Montauk for 4 weeks while August was having his big jaw surgery. This was the longest I'd ever been away from home, and I have to say, it was so amazing to suddenly be free of all that stuff that made me so sad. No one stared at Grands and me when we went to town to buy groceries. No one pointed at us. No one even noticed us. Grands was one of those grandmothers who'd do anything with her grandkids. She'd run into the ocean if you'd ask her to, even if she had on her nice shoes. She'd let me play with her makeup and didn't mind if I used it on her face to practice my face painting skills. She'd take me to ice cream, even if I hadn't eaten my dinner yet. She'd draw chalk horses on the sidewalk in front of our house. One night, while we were walking back from town, I told her that I wish I could live with her forever. I was so happy there. I think it might have been the best time in my life. Coming home after 4 weeks felt very strange at first. I remember very vividly stepping through the door and seeing August running over to welcome me home. And for this tiny fraction of a moment, I saw him not the way I've always seen him, but the way other people see him. It was only a flash, an instant, while he was hugging me, so happy that I was home. But it surprised me because I'd never seen him like that before, and I'd never felt what I was feeling before either, and a feeling I hated inside myself for having the moment I had it. But as he was kissing me with all his heart, all I could see was the drool coming down his chin. And suddenly there I was, like all those people who stare and look away, horrified, sickened, scared. Thankfully, that only lasted a second. The moment I heard August laughing in his raspy little laugh, it was over. Everything was back to the way it had been before. But it had opened a door for me, a little peephole. And on the other side of the peephole, there were two Augusts. The one I saw blindly and the one that other people saw. I think the only person in the world that I could have told that to was Grant. But I didn't, and it was too hard to explain it over the phone. I thought maybe when she comes over for Thanksgiving, I'd tell her what I felt. But just 2 months after I stayed with her in Montauk, my beautiful Grant died. It was so completely out of the blue. Apparently, she had checked herself into the hospital because she had been feeling nauseous. Mom and I drove out to see her, but it's a 3-hour drive from where she lived, and by the time we got to the hospital, Grant was gone. A heart attack, they told us, just like that. So strange how one day you can be on Earth and the next day not. Where did she go? Will I really see her again? Or is that a fairy tale? You see movies and TV shows where people receive horrible news in hospitals, but for us, with all our many trips to the hospital with August, there had always been good outcomes. What I remember the most from the day Grant died is Mom literally crumpling to the floor in slow, heavy sobs, holding her stomach like someone had just punched her. I had never, ever seen Mom like that before. Never heard sounds like that come out of her. Even through all of August's surgery, Mom had always put on a brave face. On my last day in Montauk, Grant and I had watched the sunset on the beach. We had taken a blanket to sit on, but it had gotten chilly, so we'd wrapped it around us and cuddled and talked until there wasn't even a sliver of sun left over the ocean. And then Grant told me she had a secret to tell me. She loved me more than anyone else in the world. Even August, I asked. She smiled and stroked my hair like she was thinking about what to say. I love August very, very much, she said softly. I can still remember her Portuguese accent. the way she rolled her R's. But he has many angels looking out for him, Via. And I want you to know that you have me looking out for you. Okay, menina, querida. I want you to know that you are number one for me. You are my... She looked out at the ocean and spread her hands out like she was trying to smooth the waves. You are my everything. You understand me, Via. Tu es mi todo. I understood her, and I knew why she said it was a secret. Grandmothers aren't supposed to have favorites. Everyone knows that. But after she died, I held on to that secret, and I let it cover me like a blanket. His eyes are about an inch below where they should be on his face, almost halfway down his cheeks. They slant downward at an extreme angle, almost like diagonal slits that someone cut into his face. And the left one is noticeably lower than the right one. They bulge outward because his eye cavities are too shallow to accommodate them. The top eyelids are always halfway closed, and he's on the verge, halfway closed, like he's on the verge of sleeping. The lower eyelids sag so much that they almost look like a piece of invisible string is pulling them down so that you can see the red part on the inside, like they're almost inside out. He doesn't have eyebrows or eyelashes. His nose is disproportionately big for his face and kind of fleshy. His head is pinched in on the sides where his ears should be, like someone used giant pliers to crush the middle part of his face. He doesn't have cheekbones. There are deep creases running down both sides of his nose to his mouth, which gives him a waxy appearance. Sometimes people assume he's been burned in a fire. His features look like they've been melted, like the drippings on the side of a candle. Several surgeries to correct his lips have left a few scars around his mouth, and most notably, one being a jagged gash running from the middle of his upper lip to his nose. His upper teeth are small and spray out. He has a severe overbite and an extremely undersized jawbone. He has a very small chin. When he was very little, before a piece of hip bone was surgically implanted into his lower jaw, he really had no chin at all. His tongue would just hang out of his mouth with nothing underneath to block it. Thankfully, it's better now. He can eat, at least. When he was younger, he had a feeding tube, and he can talk, and he's learned to keep his tongue inside of his mouth. Though that took him several years to master. He's also learned to control the drool that used to run down his cheek. These are considered miracles. When he was a baby, the doctors didn't think he'd live. He can hear, too. Most kids born with these types of birth defects have problems with their middle ear that prevent them from hearing. But so far, August can hear well enough through his tiny cauliflower-shaped ears. The doctor thinks that eventually he'll need to wear hearing aids, though. August hates the thought of this. He thinks the hearing aids will get noticed too much. I don't tell him that the hearing aids would be the least of his problems, of course, because I'm sure he knows this. Then again, I'm not really sure what August knows or doesn't know, what he understands or doesn't understand. Does August see others people? Does August see how other people see him, or has he gotten good at pretending not to see that doesn't bother him. Or does it bother him? When he looks in the mirror, does he see the August mom and dad sees, or does he see the August everyone sees? Or does he see another August? August, excuse me. Or does he see another August? Or is there another August he sees, someone in his dreams behind the misshapen head and face? Sometimes when I look at Grants, I could see the pretty girl she used to be beneath the wrinkles. I could see the girl from Ipanema inside the old lady walk. Does August see himself as he might have looked without that single gene that caused the catastrophe of his face? I wish I could ask him stuff. I wish he could tell me how he feels. He used to be so easy to read before the surgeries. I knew when his eyes were squinted, he was happy. When his mouth went straight, he was being mischievous. When his cheeks trembled, he was about to cry. He looks better now, no doubt about that. But the signs we used to gauge his moods are all gone. There are new ones, of course. Mom and Dad can read every single one. But I'm having trouble keeping up. And there's a part of me that doesn't want to keep trying. Why? Why he just can't say what he's feeling like everyone else. He doesn't have a trach tube in his mouth anymore that keeps him from talking. His jaw's not wired shut. He's 10 years old. He can use his words. But we circle around him like he's still a baby that he used to be. We change plans to go to plan B, interrupt conversations, go back on promises, depending on his moods, his whims, his needs. That was fine when he was little. But he needs to grow up now. We need to let him, help him, make him grow up. He's what I think here's what I think. We've all spent so much time trying to make August think he's normal, that he actually think that he's normal. And the problem is that he's not. What I've always loved most about middle school was that it was separate and different from home. I could go there and be Olivia Pullman, not Via, which is my name at home. Via was what they called me in elementary school too, back then. Everyone knew all about this, of course. Mom used to pick me up after school, and August was always in the stroller. There weren't a lot of people who were equipped to babysit for August, so Mom and Dad brought him to all my class plays and concerts and recitals, all the school functions and bake sales and book fairs. My friends knew him. My friends' parents knew him. My teachers knew him. The janitor knew him. "Hey, how you doing, Augie?" He'd always say and give August a high five. August was something of a fixture at PS 22. But in middle school, a lot of people didn't know about August. My old friends did, of course, but my new friends didn't. Or if they knew, it wasn't necessarily the first thing they knew about me. Maybe it was the second or the third thing they'd hear about me. Olivia? Yeah, she's nice. Did you hear that she has a brother who's deformed? I always hated that word, but I knew it was how people described August. And I knew those kinds of conversations probably happened all the time out of my earshot. Every time I left a room at a party or bumped into groups of friends at a pizza place. And that's okay. I'm always going to be the sister of a kid with a birth defect. That's not the issue. I just don't want to be defined that way. The best thing about high school is that hardly anybody knows me at all, except Miranda and Ella, of course, and they know not to go around talking about it. Miranda, Ella, and I have known each other since the first grade. What's so nice is we never have to explain things to one another. When I decided I wanted them to call me Olivia instead of Via, they got it without me having to explain. They've known August since he was a little baby. When we were little, our favorite thing to do was to play dress up with Augie. Load him up with a feather boa and big hats and Hannah Montana wigs. He used to love it, of course, and we thought he was adorable, cute in his own little way. Ella said he reminded her of E.T. She didn't say that to be mean, of course, though maybe it was a little bit mean. The truth is, there's a scene in the movie when Drew Barrymore dresses E.T. in a blonde wig, and that was a ringer for Augie in our Miley Cyrus heyday. Throughout middle school, Miranda, Ella, and I were pretty much our own little group, somewhere between super popular and well-liked. Not brainy, not jocks, not rich, not druggies, not mean, not goody-goody, not huge, not flat. I don't know if the three of us found each other because we were so alike in so many ways, or that because we found each other, we've become so much alike in many ways. We were happy when we all got into Faulkner High School. It was such a long shot that all three of us would be accepted, especially when almost no one else from middle school was. I remember how I screamed into the phone the day we got our acceptance letters. This is why I haven't understood what's been going on with us lately, now that we're actually in high school. Nothing like how I thought it would be. Out of the three of us, Miranda had almost always been the sweetest to August, hugging him and playing with him, long after Ella and I had moved on to play something else. Even after we got older, Miranda always made sure to try to include August in our conversation, asking him how he was doing, talking to him about Avatar or Star Wars or Bone or something she knew he liked. It was Miranda who had given Augie the astronaut helmet that he wore practically every day of the year when he was 5 or 6. She would call him Major Tom, and they would sing Space Odyssey by David Bowie together. It was their little thing. They knew all the words and would blast it on the iPod and sing the song out loud. Since Miranda's always been really good about calling us as soon as she got home from summer camp, I was a little surprised when I didn't hear from her. I even texted her and she didn't reply. I figured maybe she had ended up staying in the camp longer now that she was a counselor. Maybe she met a cute guy. Then I realized from her Facebook wall that she'd actually been back home for a full 2 weeks. So when I sent her an IM and we chatted online a bit, but she didn't give me a reason for not calling, which I thought was bizarre. Miranda had always been a little flaky, so I figured that's all it was. We made plans to meet downtown, but when I had to cancel because we were driving out to visit Tata and Papa for the weekend, so I ended up not seeing either Miranda or Ella until the first day of school. And I have to admit, I was shocked. Miranda looked so different. Her hair was cut in this super cute bob that she'd dyed bright pink. All the things of all things. And she was wearing a striped tube that A, seemed way inappropriate for school, and B, was totally not her usual style. Miranda had always been such a prude about clothes, and here she was all pink-haired and tube-topped. But it wasn't just the way she looked that was different. She was acting differently, too. I can't say she wasn't nice because she was, but she seemed kind of distant, like I was a casual friend. It was the weirdest thing in the world. At lunch, the three of us sat together like we always used to, but the dynamics had shifted. It was obvious to me that Ella and Miranda had gotten together a few times during the summer without me, though they had never actually said that. I pretended not to be at all upset while we talked, though I could feel my face getting hot, my smile being fake. Although Ella wasn't as over the top as Miranda, I noticed a change in her usual style too. It's like they had talked to each other beforehand about redoing their image at the new school, but hadn't bothered to clue me in. I admit I had always thought I was above this kind of typical teenage pettiness, but I felt a lump in my throat throughout lunch. My voice quivered as I said, "See you later," when the bell rang. Wow. Let's stop right there. Wow. Via's friends seem to be changing. And this is affecting Via. Ooh. I wonder what's going to happen next. Well, you be here for episode 7, and you'll find out. And in the meantime, you are strong, you are smart, and doggone it, you are loved. Bye-bye.